Well, before heading off on any coastal cruises, I first wanted to get some repairs sorted out. So if you followed my passage videos, you'll recall I had a problem with the reefing combs pulling away from the boom. And I found that the wood screws going into that soft Douglas fir were just not strong enough to balance against the tension of the reefing lines. So I've decided to use some fiberglass cloth and epoxy and build some bands underneath there to help distribute the tension. Hopefully that'll be a more permanent repair. So we're about to sail off the mooring here, and this should be a pretty simple drop and go, except we got that green channel marker that we'll look out for. And that would not be a problem, except that we do have some current that is setting us downwind. So that's the only thing that's going to make this a little tricky. It can never be dead easy, right? She's eagerly already sailing around the mooring here. I have the mainsail partially scandalized to stop her from doing that. Alright, so I got the mooring hawser. I've untied it and I'm just holding it by hand now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk it aft so that she'll start to fall away onto port tack, which is the tack I want to take off on, and also kind of get her going a little bit. So there we go. We've dropped the mooring and we are off. So the plan for my first cruise here is to depart Baltimore Bay and head through an area known as the Sound, which is and head up the River Ilen, which is wide enough, just wide enough to sail, and just watch your chart plotter and go in on a flooding tide. And I ended up anchoring for the night just on the northeast side of Inishbeg, which is that island in the center. And then the following morning proceeded on to Oldcourt and anchored just around the corner. So here I am sailing into Oldcourt. And that anchorage is not as wide as it looks in this photo, because this was taken at high tide. And the mudflats extend out quite a ways from either shore. So you really have to just anchor mid-channel. There's really not enough room for to be off to the side anywhere. Well, one of the reasons I went to Oldcourt was to visit Hegarty's Boatyard, where they are in the process of building, or rebuilding, but really building a replica of Conor O'Brien's famous yacht, Sarasa. And this yard is quite the obstacle course. I managed to find a few of the workers there, and they said it'd be fine if I went into the shed and took photos of Sarasa. I found a short article here, a couple of short articles on Conor O'Brien from a local historical society. So Conor O'Brien, 1880 to 1952, sailor, mountaineer, patriot, architect, author. Conor O'Brien was one of the greatest seamen of his era, a universally acknowledged pioneer of international ocean sailing. His voyage in 1923 to 1925 round the world south of the great headlands of Good Hope and Cape Horn in the 42-foot ketch Sarasa set new standards of seagoing competence for amateur sailors and small ships, achievements which would continue to be recognized as a worthy benchmark for deep-sea skills. And so we get a little bit of his genealogy. And there's a photo, Ireland, County Limerick in the 1920s of Conor O'Brien and his wife. And there's Sarasa in the background. The O'Briens of, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, were a creative family. Conor's brother, Dermot, was a noted artist who in 1910 was elected president of the Royal Hibernian Academy. And I think for a while Ireland was referred to as Hibernia, as in hibernate, because it was so cold to the invaders from the south. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's true. After his schooling in Winchester, young Conor went to the University at Oxford. He qualified as architect and always retained his interest in the subject, but his greatest work was as a naval architect with his designs for Sarasa and Ilen, and we will see soon, partially reincarnated and reincarnated version of both of those boats. While his creativity was best expressed in his books, of which he wrote 14 in a vigorously flowing style. Actually, I think one of the reasons that, this is just me speaking, I think one of the reasons Conor O'Brien is not as well known as the likes of Joshua Slocum is because his writing style is a little bit, I would say, turgid. It's not very engaging. I think it was a style that was probably characteristic of the time, sort of a Victorian style, but it makes it somewhat difficult to read. And so I think pictures of Sarasa. This is in 1927 when he entered her in the Fastnet race, and you can see here she's not as a catch, but basically a barkentine with two squares on the fore. And then he's got this really high-peaked mizzen that's almost a gunter rig on the mizzen there, and then a fisherman and a couple of headsails. So still quite an adorable craft, in my opinion. Conor O'Brien was an Irish patriot very much of his time. By adulthood, he was a fluent Irish speaker, an early member of Sinn Féin, an outspoken home ruler. In 1928, he married artist Catherine Clausen, and in the early 1930s, they spent an idyllic time cruising with Sarasa in the Mediterranean, working together on books and articles which he wrote and she illustrated. Around the world in Sarasa. Today, the round-the-world race has accustomed us to the harsh reality of the great southern oceans of the Cape of Good Hope and Cape Horn, where mighty westerlies blow unimpeded right around the world. We know that, if anything, the waves are bigger and the winds are stronger than had been formerly thought. But in coping with these extreme conditions, the professional crews of modern 60-foot racing craft around the globe are in constant touch with the outside world by radio and satellite communications. They have radar to warn of hazards ahead. And I'll also add that they have much more accurate weather routing, which Conor O'Brien had none. Conditions may be on the edge of survival, but contemporary technology and instantly activated rescue equipment and emergency beacons make the hazards manageable, the apprehension controllable. And here's a couple of photos of Sarasa. When Conor O'Brien made his pioneering circumnavigation, his little vessel in 1923, the rugged latitudes of the roaring 40s and screaming 50s were little known. Certainly by yachtsmen. He may have been the first to actually do that run from New Zealand to Cape Horn in a small yacht. I'm not sure of that, but he was definitely one of the first. They were the region of only the toughest professional sailors. Yeah, of course, the merchant sailors were well familiar with these latitudes. The clipper ships and then the post clippers, the big windjammers. Just around this time, it was in 1927 that Alan Villiers shipped aboard the Herzegovina Cecily, big four-masted bark with grain from Australia around Cape Horn back to Falmouth, England. And he wrote a book, and he was a very good writer. And he wrote a great book on that called Falmouth for Orders, which if you're interested, I'll leave it to the interested student to go look that up and read it. So, and there she is on the right. There's Sarasa. Now, see here, she's a traditional gaff catch. Actually, that mizzen looks like it's actually a lug sail. The mizzen's on a yard there. And so anyway, she's a gaff catch, and there she is departing Dublin, 1923. And on the left is Conor O'Brien with one of his crew. He did not do this voyage solo. He had crew. So this is a rebuild of Conor O'Brien's Sarasa, and she was wrecked in Jamaica, and I guess they recovered some of the original there. No, she looks extensively rewooded. But stem to stern, she's 42 feet. And you can see the beam is way forward here, and she was internally ballasted. So she must not have gone to windward too well. Looks like they are going to fit her for a shaft log there. You'd never guess there was a classic boat in there, would you? So I managed to catch up with Liam Hegarty, who owns the Boatyard and is in charge of the restoration.
The longest plank we took off was 45, 50 feet.
Right.
You know, so there's lots of...
In the planking and the frames were also pine?
No, the frames are oak. Irish oak.
All right.
Were you down at Lochine?
No.
That's nice. It's a place, if you want to walk to it. It's kind of a nature reserve, but there's more people down there now than tourists and wild things.
Yep.
It's just in that direction, but the hill over to the Lochine Wood, and it's most of the oak came from there.
Yep.
So it was a local bird, the pitch pine.
Right. All right, so she was... pitch pine on oak.
Pitch pine on both of them, yeah, brought the Saiorse and the island.
And how much of her did they recover from Jamaica?
There was some framing.
Right.
There was wrought iron.
Right.
Knees.
Yeah.
And other bits and pieces.
Right. So it's her keel was pretty much gone. Huh?
Yeah.
And they just collected that and put it on a ship and.
Yeah. Shipped it in. Yeah.
Right.
You know, that's
so it's almost it's a restoration, but almost a complete rebuild.
It depends on who we take.
I stand up the crane there for lifting that out.
Which thing?
So here O'Brien writes in his first chapter, there are two ways of getting to and from New Zealand. One can go east to west, running down one's longitude in the very constant trade winds, but constantly hampered by land, or from west to east in the roaring 40s, where indeed the winds are not so trustworthy, but the sea is clear of obstructions. The calms in the Gulf of Panama close the former route to me, who have no auxiliary power. To digress for just a moment, the foolish question which is often asked of me is, how do you manage without a motor? By following that track on which a sailing vessel goes the faster. I ran down my easting, sometimes to my great discomfort in the 30s, more happily in the 40s, and for 12 days without incident, there was some trepidation in the 50s. Well, I don't know if the River Ilen would count as a route on which a sailing boat goes the faster, but we're up the creek without an engine here, so the winds have come north-northwest, so I have a fair wind, or almost fair wind, to sail back out. And so I'm going to take it. It's a little blustery, but I'm going to take it. And so I'm weighing anchor now. And we got to get her to bear away pretty quickly because this channel is not that wide. The water shoals up well before you get to the shore that you can see there. So I lashed the tiller to windward, and then to help with the balance, I just dash forward. I'm going to raise the staysail here, and you can hear the wind. It's blowing pretty good. It's a blustery day. So we are off. Though I still have the mainsail scandalized, and we're just coming to the bend in the river, at which point we'll probably be close reaching or even close hauled. It's hard to tell exactly what the wind will be then. So I got a little bit of room here, so I'm going to lash the tiller, dash forward, and just peak the mainsail up so that we'll be able to come up on the wind. So coming up on our port side, you'll see the ketch there with the light blue painted topsides. That's the Ketch Island, which was built at Hegarty's and designed by Conor O'Brien. So I think it's fitting and proper that we head out under sail, even if we don't have a choice in the matter, and as a way of paying tribute to the great Irish circumnavigator.